So over the summer holidays, I'm setting you guys a task to be able to complete. This is to finish the health and safety and maintenance that we did during lockdown. Now, we were supposed to pick this up at the end of this term, but because we've been catching up on previous work that wasn't completed properly, this does need to be done. So I'm setting it during summer. It's 800 words. It should not take you more than a day to complete, especially if you did the work during lockdown. But even if you didn't, should not take more than a day. Just set yourself a day aside and sit down and just knock this out. It does not require research unless you're aiming for that distinction grade. So far in year 10, what we have done is the musical styles essay, where we had the 2 different styles of music. That was 1,500 words. We had the practice plan, where we actually wrote out the 5 skills and how you plan on practicing 2 songs that you chose. That was no more than 1,000 words. We had the rehearsal diary and the evaluation of your skills. So that was after the 6 weeks, where you wrote PowerPoint 1 week, so 6 slides, 1 week of each, and then an evaluation of how you went. So what were you really good at? What do you need to improve on? And of course, what do you need to do in the future? So if you haven't finished those 3, you must also complete them over the holidays. You have had months to complete them. It needs to come out of your time. We need to get those done and make sure they're done before you come back in year 11. Otherwise, you'll be on the computer all the time, not being able to practice. And that will just be more out of your time, having to put in extra practice to make up for that you're missing in class. In year 11, we have the health and safety maintenance that we're going to do over the summer holidays, 800 words. Then at the start in autumn, we have our music analysis task. So during autumn 1, we'll be going over how we do those music analysis again. We started them before half of you went into lockdown. So we did pause, and we'll continue that in autumn term. Second half of autumn, you will have the assignment to complete. We'll have some class time as well as doing it at home. The reason we only have those 2 is because in spring term of year 11, you have your controlled assessment. Now, this is your exam for music. All the work must be completed in lesson time. You cannot work from home on this task. Okay, so all of spring term, you're not going to have homework to complete because it must all be done in school under controlled conditions. So please keep that in mind. If you feel like you're working a lot in autumn, you won't have homework in spring. So put in the extra time in autumn to make sure that you're on top of your work. This is marked by the exam board like an exam is. So I can't help with this. You can't ask me how to interpret the questions. I can't give you guidance on how to practice or how to answer the questions. You must do it all yourself. You cannot use your phones and you cannot access the internet during this time. We will get more into this in autumn when we get back, but this is your main task in year 11. So this needs to be your focus. You must have all this other stuff out of the way. So just get it done a couple of days in summer. Make sure you're on top of things. So during lockdown, we were actually studying health and safety and maintenance of your instrument. We were asked to complete a couple of tables and submit these. About half the class did submit these, and I do have them if you don't have access to them anymore, and I can send them back to you. But if you did not submit this, you have disadvantaged yourself because you're going to have to complete these before you actually complete your PowerPoint. So it's going to take you a couple more hours than the rest of the class. If you did submit them, please don't start again. Use the work that you've done and just turn them into sentences and just review it a little bit. So when we did health and safety, this is the stuff that we discussed. So we went through the different types of hazards that musicians can be exposed to. So noise, hearing health, vocal health, electrical safety, fire safety, temperature, ventilation. When we do performances, even terrorism precautions, but we're just talking about our instruments, so you don't need to worry about those. What we had to do was identify these hazards and their personal issues when assessing hazards. So we could talk about particular occupational hazards such as noise, temperature, that can do with you or the instruments, external influences. Probably doesn't affect most of you, but it is something that affects most musicians. The weight of the instrument, your posture, the time you spend practicing, these are all considered health and safety. Your personal issues, so whether you get extremely anxious or stressed when you're practicing, any previous injuries that might be unrelated to music but might affect your practice. Right, like you might have injured your back playing sport or your legs playing sport. So for a drummer or even someone who sits down to play music, that could cause some issues. These are all personal issues, so every single person's going to be different. We can also have music-related issues, so hearing loss. Okay, dental problems relates to people who play instruments that actually go in your mouth, so not you guys. your any vocal issues, so singers, hand and wrist pain for anyone playing guitar or keyboard, back and neck pain, anyone sitting down when playing. They need to consider all of them, just some of them. So I've just taken these two. So ones that I've been concerned about are like muscular injuries. So ways that we might avoid those or reduce the risk. I can always make sure I'm warming up, taking breaks, making sure I'm well rested before rehearsing. I mean, one big one is improving cardiovascular fitness, but that's going a bit extreme. So those are the type of things that you might consider if you're going for a distinction. Making sure you're covering all bases, making sure you have good posture, making sure you're stretching. So what you had to do during lockdown was complete a risk assessment on your instrument. So it looked like this. So this is the table you'll need to complete. You need to finish at least 3 to 4 health and safety issues. So we have to, in the hazards area, you have to write down 3 or 4 things that are issues when playing your instrument. So not for every musician, just your instrument. Write about who might be harmed, because it's probably just you, because we're talking about your instrument, but it could affect other people. RAG is your assessment risk. This you can do, but is not necessary to complete the PowerPoint. And then the precautions, what can you do to try and avoid that? So just as an example, one of the hazards might be back injury from sitting down and playing, let's say, keyboard. Right? Your back might be harmed because of bad posture or a long time sitting down. So precautions in place that you can put in. Well, you can make sure that you stretch before you practice, because that can just loosen the muscles in your back. You can make sure that you are regularly getting up and taking a break from practice. You can make sure that you're conscious about your posture, so always having your shoulders back when playing the keyboard. So all these different things that we can put in place. So you should have one hazard, explain how it would hurt you, and then as many precautions as you can possibly think of. Okay? The more precautions, the better the grade's going to be. So 3 or 4 different hazards, and then complete the table, and that's that task. The next part was instrument maintenance. So in the lesson in lockdown, we went through the day-to-day maintenance of various instruments, and then we specified your particular instrument. So first you had to identify the parts of your instrument that could be damaged. So think about your personal instrument. What could be damaged through regular use? So not through, if you're a guitarist, hitting it on the ground. That's not regular use. But playing the strings, what could be damaged? Identify the damage for each part. So again, if we're guitarists, we might identify that the tuning pegs might get damaged, the body of the guitar, the strings of the guitar, the pickups, the amp, the lead. Okay, all of those things could be damaged. Identify solutions that could prevent or fix this damage. Okay, so these are things in place that will stop this from happening or fix it. So if we go like strings, if we're trying to prevent the strings from damage, we can make sure, 1, that we're playing properly, 2, that we're aware of tuning and making sure that the strings aren't too tight or too loose when we're playing. We can make sure they're cleaned regularly, so not rusting or getting dusty in any way or any sort of oil that's on them. And if they do break, we can make sure that we are aware of how to change the strings. So they're all things in place that can just prevent this damage from happening. And then identify what you should complete personally. So again, from the guitar point of view, these are all things you should be doing yourself. You should be cleaning the strings regularly. You should be aware of your practice techniques. You should be able to change the strings yourself. But if a more serious issue happens, like a pickup breaks or the tuning pegs break, that's when you might need to go to a professional. So make sure you identify those ones. So in lockdown, we went through a grand piano. These are the things that could do. So for example, we wouldn't touch the piano strings. A professional would do that. But we could clean the keys of the piano. We probably wouldn't touch the pedals other than just to dust them down. The stand, that's a pretty simple fix. That could be something that you do yourself. The lid of the exterior, making sure that it's clean, that you could do yourself. So then what we did was do a template, very similar to health and safety. So in this one, you had to identify 3 or 4 parts of your instrument that could be damaged. Now, if you are doing an electronic instrument like guitar, like keyboard, you don't just have to stick with that instrument. So keyboard, you can talk about the power supply as well. And with guitar, you can talk about the lead and the amp as well. Drum kits, you can talk about the cymbals, the drums, the stands, the pedals, all of that. So 3 or 4 different parts, how they could be damaged. So think about what could actually happen to these, right? As many as possible, not just one thing. Think about how you can prevent this damage. So what could you do to stop it from happening? And then those things that you would stop from happening or fix what's happened, who would complete them? Okay, would it be you after rehearsals or after each week? Or would it be a professional actually taking and getting it serviced? So specify those things and fill out 3 or 4 different columns for different parts of your instrument. Once you have done that, you need to turn those into full sentences. So the health and safety table, you're going to take each row and just write it up in full sentences. So what is the issue? How does it relate to your instrument? And look at your own approach. So do you actually avoid these? And what do you do? Or what should you start doing if you don't? So an example, if one of them was injury to your hand while playing, hand or wrist, right? Things that you might do, you might say, to avoid injury to my wrist, I stretch regularly, I take breaks every 10 minutes to ensure I'm not overexerting the muscles in my wrist. Or if you don't do anything, you should be like, in future, I plan on doing this to avoid these injuries. For the second part, we need to take the day-to-day maintenance table and turn that into full sentences. So what do you need to maintain on your instrument? What can be damaged? And what can you do to avoid it? And then specify which ones you do to yourself. Grades are determined on detail. So if you're after a merit, we need clear and detailed. So make sure that you're not just saying 1 or 2 things about how you can avoid damage or how you can prevent yourself from getting injured. We need as many as possible. It needs to be detailed. For a distinction, it's comprehensive. And comprehensive means that you've covered absolutely everything from every angle. You should struggle to stay within this word count if you're doing a comprehensive piece of work. So how do we do this? So we take this information, so you can see here I've got this keys information. I've got my table, which is just dot points. Then I turn that into full sentences. So I've said through regular use of the keyboard, the keys are likely to be damaged. They can be worn down through regular use and can build up dirt and dust if not cleaned properly, and even broken if used incorrectly. So in that part, I've specified how it could be damaged, okay? What the part is and how it could be damaged. Then I move on. To prevent this, I will wipe down my keyboard after every use. So that's specifying what you can do to prevent it and who's doing it. I will wipe it down and ensure it is used correctly. If keys are broken, I will take them to a professional to be replaced before any more damage can occur. So that's showing how much you should do and when it should be taken off to a professional. So we need to do that for every single point. Now, in total, we should have about 400 words for health and safety and about 400 words for maintenance. Now, that is to hit the maximum word count. So people going for merits and distinctions, you should be hitting that word count. Right? Those in distinctions should be more specific and very clear in the language they're using to make sure they're covering all their points without repeating themselves. Past students, you don't have to hit those, but you should be doing all of these things. If you're not meeting all 4 of these boxes across here and on the health and safety one, you're not meeting the requirements and therefore you would have to do it again. So make sure you're doing exactly what it says here. Part, how it could be damaged, prevent the damage, who, and put it into sentence form.